Welcome to Chaos Divided, your weekly dose of wholesome hammer. If you're a fan of what we do, we hope you'll subscribe and follow us along. And if you'd like to support us directly, you can find us on patreon.com/Chaos Divided 40k. This week, we're talking about how to build fun and fluffy lists for whatever purpose you need them to be.
I'm so excited.
Joined by the ever amazing Tanya, the War Mistress.
Hello, how's it going?
Good. And I picked out a quote especially for you.
Yay.
It's Orkz is made for two Fings, Fightin and Winnin.
Wow.
And that's from Dawn of War, which I you know what? Dawn of War is a endless gift of 40k, just everything.
I've never played any of the Warhammer video games except Space Marine.
See, Dawn of War was like old school. Like that was I think that game's almost 20 years old now. And that was like, for a lot of people, I think that was their first introduction to Warhammer. And it was pretty good.
Yeah. It's real-time strategy though, right?
Yeah, but it was like a real-time strategy, but it was squad-based. It was the same people that did Company of Heroes, so it was like that same type of like tactical thing. So they kind of did like what Total War did to like Warhammer Fantasy, they did to 40k, and then just like kept smashing all the factions in until they didn't fit and the game like broke and didn't make any sense anymore, and like that's 40k, so it worked.
Yeah. I personally just like whenever I play video games, I just want to turn my brain off. I don't want to have to think tactically. So yeah, Space Marine was better for me. I
mean, when you played Dawn of War as Orkz, you just built Orkz and then you just clicked a move attack, and then that was pretty much how you solved that problem. You just go, and they would go, whoa, and then they would either win or die, and then you would just keep doing that until you either won or lost. Okay,
so Orky tactics, I like it.
You build little wall towers to like psych them up, you know?
Yeah,
it's a good
sounds
time.
legit. Yeah.
It was very orky.
I love it.
I feel like they got Orkz right.
I feel like lately I have just been LARPing my orcs on the table and having a great time. So yeah, I'm really excited actually to talk about lists and things today.
Yeah, because we were kind of talking a bit about before. I am like a sit down and I'm gonna make a list just for something to do. And I feel like we have very different approaches.
Yeah, because I actually don't enjoy list building. I will only do it if I need to do it, and I will play the same list over and over and over and over again until I need to change it, essentially. Either I have found that it is like it has a big gaping tactical hole within it, or in the case of what's happened recently, like all of the balanced data slate things have come through, and I need to make changes. So that's where I'm at right now.
I feel like, you're still kind of in that like post-codex haze that I'm in, where you're still trying to like figure out the book. And then Pariah Nexus is just kind of like, any of my old expectations are gone. And then the balanced data slate also, I have no idea what the field looks like anymore. So it's a very weird time to be building lists. And I feel like this is why, we're focusing more on like building like fun and fluffy lists. And a fun and fluffy list doesn't have to be a bad list. It's more just like a list that you're going to have a smile on your face while you pilot it. And I think in times like this where you're like, I don't know what's good anymore. Like, if you can kind of go back to that, like, you know what? I'm just going to play with a smile on my face. Then you're going to have a good time.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing. I'm just LARPing. I'm not even playing like the best detachment within my codex. I literally just was like, okay, I have these two models that I really want to play. How do I make it work? And that's just what I do. I just pick something that I think looks rad, and then I go from there.
So the last list you built, what were the two things?
The last list that I built, well, it's actually just a variation of the one we're going to talk about today.
Okay. Well, I guess that was what I was trying to say. The list we're going to talk about today. What were the two fun things?
Okay, so before I got the codex and I was still an index hammer, I brought a Gorkanaut and a Morkanaut.
Mm.
And yeah, they weren't great, but I was having some success with it and having a blast and like putting them on the table and people being like, "What are those?" Right? Because my entire army is also 3D printed, so nothing looks like what you expect it to look like. But so yeah, just putting these giant models on the table just felt really good. So and now I figure I've got actual rules to make them even better, so I have to play my Gorkanaut and my Morkanaut.
And are you playing? I don't know them all off. Is Dreadmont the one where you get to push the button?
Yeah,
That is such a fun mechanic,
it is. It's so orky too, right?
right?
Yeah, because like you never know how the orc law really works. I was gonna say magic. It is magic, but it's not magic.
It's not like structured. It's technology we don't understand, and the orcs don't understand it either.
That's right. That's right. So, yeah, I love it. It's so super fluffy. The first time that I played with this detachment, which is not this list, I actually brought 2 Gorkanauts and a Morkanaut. But that was like my first time that I ever scored 100 points in a game. So I was like, okay, I see you. Big red button. I see you.
Was it the rolls that got you there, or do you feel like it was just like you just brought so much Gork and Mork-a-naut that you just couldn't lose?
Okay, so I feel like it was a combination of things. I feel like I deployed really well. I feel like my opponent was playing World Eaters and played way too aggressively, and I don't know if that was to like sort of make my Waw turn less effective. I'm not too sure, but played really aggressively with like his 2 most expensive models and good pulls for cards and some good rolls.
I mean, talking about LARPing, I don't know a World Eaters player that doesn't LARP as a Corn Berserker. So, like, a World Eaters player playing too aggressively, it's just like, that's what they do.
I know. And honestly, as an orc player, I just absolutely love playing against a World Eaters player because, like, first turn there's going to be combat.
Oh, yeah.
Something's going to happen first turn, right? So, and I don't think I've ever had more fun playing Warhammer than playing against World Eaters.
I love playing against World Eaters, and I also love, like, they will come crashing into me, but then I have claws too, so it's just they come in, don't destroy me, and then they're just like, oopsie, and then it's just like the swing back, and it's just like, it's so back and forth, and I've never had a bad game against World Eaters.
Yeah. So yeah, if you're a World Eaters player out there, I see you, I appreciate you. Keep fighting the good fight.
I actually feel like since they got Angron, they can finally live their like hyper aggressive dreams.
Yeah.
And like, you know, the Lord Avocado, like they finally have enough tools in the toolbox that they can actually be World Eaters players. Like World Eaters players before they got a codex.
Yeah.
Were kind of like, oh, you're Chaos Space Marines with a lot of Corn Berserkers, but now it's like, you know, just waves of 8-bound being like just absolutely trashed. Turn 1. Like, it's glorious. It's great.
Yeah.
I love it.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I got distracted by World Eaters players.
I mean, I think that's fair. So yeah, pressing the big red button is absolutely amazing. It's hilariously fun. And I have a new list now that we could go through a little bit later, just sort of show people like how my thought process works as, I would say, a filthy casual narrative player who also exists in a very competitive meta. I feel like the way that I play the game is very unique. So it'll be really interesting, I think, for people to hear how this list comes together.
I am going to steal that title because I also feel like a filthy casual narrative player who is forced to play competitively. And I was telling you about this. I got into the old world and I discovered that like there are also a bunch of just like meta chasing competitive players,
Hmm.
and I bought Archaon so that I can stomp all of their faces because I will
Yep.
rise to the challenge, but I will do it in my own ridiculous way, and that's how I feel like I can hold on to my narrative soul. Is just like I'm gonna play your game, but I'm gonna play it my way, not your way.
I don't really try to out competitive, out sweaty the sweaty
That's
neckbeardy.
what I'm saying. I don't either.
Yeah, I don't try, like, I just try to do my own thing, and I've come to realize that the way that my army looks on the table is very, very important to me. And through my 5-ish years of getting coaching and playing against really tough players, I've also realized that I cannot play a net list. I can't play somebody else's list. It could be
Mm.
the best list on the planet, but if I didn't make it myself, I don't know what the tools are there for. I don't know how it's supposed to work, and I just don't have success with it. So, yeah, for better or worse, like these weird, wacky lists are going to continue until my morale improves.
You know what though, and I will say, with the exception of a few people locally who, they're the type of players and they're at a caliber where like their lists become the net lists. You
Oh,
know,
yeah. Hmm.
like you know what I mean.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
When somebody's trying to pilot a net list that is not their creation, those are actually where I tend to maybe stomp more face than I'd like to, because if it's not like coming from your heart, it doesn't fit your play style, you're not going to do it right.
Yeah.
Like, because the list is quote unquote good does not mean you are good at it.
Yeah. I agree.
And yeah, so you're much better off playing a less honed list that like fills you with joy, and but you also know how to do things with it.
Yeah, I think in general, everybody, whether you play narrative, just super casual or competitive, when you're making a list, it's a really good idea to keep in mind and visualize while you're making the list what each piece in your list can do, what you'd like it to do, and
Mm.
what it's likely to do.
I really, I know we don't have the force organization chart anymore, but I actually like to think back to that when I build a list. Like, what is your elite? What is your heavy support? What's your fast attack? Like, putting your units into roles can help you understand like what your list is actually capable of and how it's going to play. Like, if you're looking at your list and you're like, wow, I put in 70%, heavy support options, like you're not going to be fighting over the midboard turn 2. Like, that's just not going to be happening. Whereas if you're all fast attack, then you know what, I'm going to need to be on them and put the pressure on immediately because I have no stamina. And I think being able to look back at your list and go, okay, what is the intention of this unit? What does the data sheet like support? And then be able to fit that into your game plan is, from a tactical standpoint, when you're trying to build a list, I think having that in the back of your mind isn't bad.
Yeah, and definitely be aware of your play style, right?
Mm.
So even though I play Orkz, I do realize that I'm not a super aggressive player, right? So for me, Speed Freaks, probably I'm not going to have any success playing that, because you do have to have a certain amount of aggression, right, to go in and pin people in their zone, because you just aren't going to be as tough as some of the other detachments.
That is a different orc you have to LARP.
That is a different orc. It's an orc that I have never been called to LARP. And yeah, so I do think that understanding your playstyle also when going into list building is super important, and that is something that I wish people emphasized more to me when I was picking out my first faction, learning how to play, making my first lists. It's just something that I wish that somebody would have like taken me under their wing to be like, so like, what's your favorite class in Dungeons and Dragons, or something like that, because I think that would have informed me and made my first steps into Warhammer a lot better.
I actually find it, because you're one of the only people I've ever heard talk like this, but you actually compare Warhammer to like Magic the Gathering in a very interesting way, and like attaching playstyles between Magic the Gathering into 40k. And I feel like I have started to understand factions technically better by thinking of them that way, because Magic the Gathering has such like strongly defined, like each color has such a strongly defined
Yeah.
concept behind it that
Right.
being able to be like, oh, like, you know, Thousand Suns and Grey Knights are blue, and
Yes.
just like, okay, that makes me understand them better, and then I can actually start
Yes.
like thinking about how I'm going to play against them better.
That's right. Orcs and World Eaters are definitely red,
Yeah.
right? What is something I guess like Necrons right now with other resurrection would probably be white.
Yep.
Lots of healing. Yeah, you could definitely think of factions or list archetypes even as one of the colors.
Yeah, because I mean, within a faction, then because that's the other side of Magic Gathering is as you start adding and mixing the colors together, you create different archetypes.
That's right.
Um, but even like I would even say Guard is maybe a little bit. It's like maybe a white green. Like there's like some of that like
Yep.
resiliency from white, but then there's also kind of just like the big stompy things from
Yep.
green, where you just have a lot of like beef.
Right.
So yeah, no, there's a lot of like interesting ways I think to like form that I feel like as 40k players we haven't actually developed a lot of a language around those archetypes. Like we're like, oh, Necrons play like Necrons, and you're like, okay, but like what does that actually mean?
Yeah, or like we'll come up with a silly name for a really popular net list, but the name doesn't initially tell you anything about like Muscle Beach, right? Which was like the Gene Stealer cult list that was dominating for a while. It's like, okay, like muscles, I guess. Is it gonna come and like just punch you really hard? Or does it like look real nice? Does it do heavy lifting? Like, it doesn't really tell me that. Does it look real nice in a swimsuit? Like, it doesn't tell me anything really.
I mean, if it looks good in a swimsuit is entirely up to what you think of Tyranids. I feel like, you know,
Yeah, well,
it depends on your opinions on the Tyranid physique. No, but I think, you know what, if we're going to talk about list building, I feel like, you know, we need to be able to talk about the archetypes of like, you know, the detachments now give you a little bit, as the codexes are coming out, a kind of a little bit of a framework of like, okay, they're going to play differently, but you can run very similar lists between detachments and have them work incredibly differently.
absolutely. Yeah. Like even if we look at the different detachments in the orc book, like you've got a white detachment in Green Tide, right? Because you're just going to be healing things or bringing things back, or well, I guess it doesn't work quite as good now, but and then you've also got obviously a green in Dread Mob because it's going to allow you to bring big stompy robots, right? And then what would fast be? I guess fast would be red.
It could also be black, because black is a lot of like sacrificing and then like building up in like alternative ways. Like when I think of like Emperor's Children, I think that's kind of like falls in that like red black area of like you're fast and you hit hard, but you're also like generally like blowing yourself up and like sacrificing and like even donating units to like accomplish your goals.
I don't think that orcs have a blue detachment though. That's not really an orky thing.
It's usually like blue by force. It's like, I'm gonna stop you from doing things because I'm just like on your face. Like,
Yeah.
you know, it's like that's what speed freaks are. It's like, I'm gonna deny you every option because I'm just so aggressive. But no, you don't actually have like countering and like slowing down and like stopping power through like abilities. It's more just like, it's the World Eaters version. It's the same thing. It's just like you can't make the choices you want to make because you're already in combat.
Yeah. That.
So yeah, yeah, they definitely don't have a blue. I would actually say a lot of factions don't.
And you know what? I'm gonna be I guess a little bit vocal about that. I think that's a good thing, honestly.
Well, and I think the struggle is that whenever, like, when I think of blue, I think of sisters because they don't need to roll dice.
Yeah.
Eldar don't
Yeah.
need to roll dice. Grey Knights don't follow movement rules. Thousand Suns have too many tricks in the trade, and demons don't have to follow movement rules. So it's a lot of your like tricksy, ridiculous factions that are kind of your blue, and they're also typically your like higher skill cap factions.
Yeah. Which is fine. Which is fine. Make them hard to play. Make them so that we don't see them that often, honestly. Because I feel like newer players have a really hard time against those kind of factions. And sometimes those tricks feel unfair to newer players.
I'm gonna say something that might be controversial. Custodians are blue-white, I think. They are both
interesting.
They are both the same type of denial that white often is in Magic the Gathering. And then they also do a lot of the same like countering, you can't do this, or just like I ignore this, or I don't care, or I don't follow the same rules everyone else plays. Like it's not strict blue where they stop you from doing things. They just like they don't care about what you're doing and just move on.
So if you're a person who plays Custodes and you really enjoy the aspect of green, you have that option as well, right? You could be like, okay, I'm going to bring in one of the hover tanks. I'm going to bring in a Telemon Dreadnought. You have access. And I think that most factions will allow you to bring in pieces of all of the different archetypes that we're talking about right now.
Yeah, I definitely, there's some that maybe like Grey Knights can't play red. Like they just don't have anything that hits that hard. Like if we're talking about that like aggressive in your face style. So there is like some limitations to that.
But they could ally.
Yeah, I guess Canis Rex is just like a big red thumbprint on everyone's face right now. So you're right. Yeah, you just when in doubt, Canis Rex. But
that's right.
But yeah, within the faction, there's not a lot of like punch. And I think that's okay. Like every faction shouldn't solve every problem with a Thunderhammer.
Sure. I mean, what about kill saws though?
I mean, only orcs. Well, actually, 8-pound kind of have kill saws too, if we're being honest.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I don't want everything. Can you imagine if like Eldar had access to kill saws? Like just some like fast, flighty thing that comes in at strength 14 and beats your tanks to death.
No thanks.
Right? So no, I don't think everyone should have a kill saw.
Okay. I admit maybe there's a flaw in my logic there.
I think orcs should have kill saws because that's fun.
So fun.
I think I want kill saws with my Emperor's Children, but because they're fun. I wish I had a high strength punchy, just like I want a sonic fist, just like.
It'd be like one of those shrimps, you know, that like they move so fast that it creates the sound waves or the
creates a sonic boom. Yeah. That'd be awesome. Just like some like Rock'em Sock'em like
That's
Terminators.
Right. But you never see them punch, right?
Oh,
they're just always like this. They're just always primed. They just always look. But then people are just exploding in front of them.
Either that or it's just like Power Fist with like giant subwoofers just like taped on. And it's just like you just like they like play the brown note and they just like you pants and then your bells explode. Because that would also be very Emperor's Children.
Are you gonna have to put in like one of the Chaos Gods over that?
I'm gonna have to.
Yeah. I just wonder how that works if you have somebody on the podcast that doesn't play Chaos.
Well, it's Chaos Divided. I bring the chaos.
Okay.
See, your Imperial heart will never know the glory of chaos.
It's true. I was tempted a little bit last year, and then I was like, I don't want to paint all that trim, and then I put that idea aside.
Okay, trim is easier to paint than edge highlighting is to do. I don't understand the hatred of trim.
No, I enjoy edge highlighting. I don't enjoy painting trim.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Because the thought of edge highlighting makes me want to vomit.
It's my zen time, but I used to put really graphic eyeliner on every day, so my hand is really steady.
Amazing.
Yeah. So if you want to get good at edge highlighting, just put on eyeliner every day for a year, and like immediately you will enjoy edge highlighting.
Can you give your orcs like winged highlighter? Because that would be, or eyeliner, sorry.
They have like the tiniest little eyeballs, but I mean, I could.
Just give them little cat's eyes, just like a few, just like a war boss with just like the cat's eye. I feel like that would.
It would actually be funny to put like big fake lashes on them.
Yes, do it.
Maybe I'll do a squad of like lady orcs or something like that.
There we go.
Yeah.
I mean, orcs don't have gender, so they can identify however they want.
Yeah, that's right. If they want to wear a dress and have big fake eyelashes, they can do that.
I actually feel like that would be very orky. I feel like that it's like, you know, I feel like that could still look very orky and like be very like fluffy and fun and make total sense.
Yeah.
Like some mega knobs with like giant fake eyelashes. Just like you're just completing the ensemble at this point. You're just working on yourself.
That's right. They're living their best lives, and you know, imagine the freedom of movement that like a nice dress would offer.
Right.
You know, a big fluffy dress. It could work.
Never let your enemies know that's just a brutal and cunning strategy.
I think it's more cunning than brutal, honestly, but I like it either way.
I mean, any plan that's cunning is also brutal, so.
If it's coming from an orc, yeah.
Exactly, see?
Yeah.
Now, I want to talk about this list you build, because I'm curious how you build lists. Because I feel like that's, you know what? That's just something we never talk about. Like, list building, I feel like it's just like, people are like, oh, you have this list. No further questions.
Yeah, I feel like Art of War podcast sometimes goes through it a little bit, but they never go through how it was built, right? So yeah, you want me to go through my list and my whole thoughts on it?
I mean, I would also, just going back to the Art of War, I would say we maybe have a different focus than Art of War does. I might say we have a different part of the community we're talking about around here than Art of War. They're on maybe the other end. Yeah,
I would agree. So when I start list building, like I said, I start with 2 units that I think look really cool. So like I said, I was playing in the index and I was playing my Gorkanaut and Morkanaut because they looked cool, but I didn't have rules, and now I've got rules, so that's where we start. And then from there, I usually like to think about, well, how do I make them even better, right? So I make them better by allowing them to heal, and they sometimes need help getting a +1 to hit, especially with their shooting. So I need 2 mechs. I need a mech for each one, essentially, to allow them to function optimally. And I just throw 2 regular mechs into the mix, and yeah, then I start thinking like, okay, how else do I optimize this particular detachment ability? What other things can I take? And originally I thought grot tanks, and then they got legended, so I was like, okay, well, guess we're not gonna do that then. So I've always, here's the other thing. I know a lot of people really like the shooting aspect of this detachment. I don't enjoy orc shooting. I don't enjoy making lists that's specifically built for orc shooting. So a lot of my focus is still going to be melee. I have a shooting army in guard that hits on 4s, so having a shooting army in orcs that's going to hit on mostly 5s, that's not going to be my focus.
I am very confused by the idea of building a list for orcs around shooting, because that is the thing they're like the worst at.
I know some people make it work, but again, it's like I can't play a net list, and I just don't think I would enjoy that as much, right? So some of my choices in here are going to look funny to people, but knowing that I want to focus on melee because pushing the big red button also works in melee. So just keep that in the back of your mind as I'm telling you some of the stuff that I'm adding here. So I added 2 Def Dreads that are all punch. They don't shoot at all. And I like these. If we're going to talk about how they work, I like to push them out to the midfield, maybe not to be on an objective, but to countercharge an objective. And I feel like the Def Dreads are pretty good at clearing out Marines.
Mm.
So if you want to put Marines on an objective in the middle, like I'm going to have 2 Death Dreads out there. They're going to make that a problem for you. And they also get to push the button. So amazing. And then I don't really need anything to make them better, because if I plan it and I get them on there on the Wa turn, they'll be pretty survivable. Plus, I mean, they're going to go out and clear the objective and then most likely die. And that's fine. I think I'm okay with that. And then I start to think about, how am I going to play the mission? Is how I start to think. Well, I'm slow, right? Because I don't have any buggies or any real fast attack options so far. So I need to have an option to infiltrate, to screen out a lot of my big stuff, to allow them the time to maneuver to get where they need to be. So I need to take commandos at least. And now Boss Snickrot, I think, is just too good to leave at home. So I'm going to take both of those. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I'm also going to need to bring some battle line units now, right? Because you need battle line to do a bunch of stuff in the new Pariah deck. My last version of this list, I had no battle line at all. Just did not want it. But now I need it. So I'm going to bring 2 units of Gretchen, just mins, minimum size. And then I'll also be able to try and farm command points if they're on objectives, which is going to be helpful. And then I'm also going to bring a unit of boys, but I only have Shoota boys. I don't have Choppa Slugga boys. So I'm going to bring a unit of boys with Shootas, and I'm going to attach one of the mechs to it. So the idea is that this particular unit of boys is going to go up with a mech into the midfield, hopefully sticky an objective, and then they're probably immediately going to die. But that's the idea. And then that mech is going to get the Git Finder goggles. So if they hit anything, big if they hit anything, at least nobody's going to get the benefit of cover from it with the Git Finder goggles. And then I also like to take a lot of trash in my list. So I got two units of Storm Boys just to go out and be annoying, or go claim objectives, or deep strike in to get secondaries or whatever. I feel like I prefer to take 3 units, but I want to take 5 because I've got 3 units of battle line now. So I'm trying that out. I might decide I need to put a 3rd unit in, but we'll see. And then I've got a unit of 3 Warbikers, which are fast and are really good at scoring objectives, are surprisingly tough. And I just like them. I know a lot of people don't like them, but my Warbikers look like the mono wheels from Borderlands 3. And I love them, and I hate leaving them at home, so I'm bringing them every time. Just bringing them.
Yes, I have seen your Warbikers, and they are amazing.
Thank you. They're super fun. And then I also feel like I need to have some melee punch because it's Orkz, right? So I have, and this is my Warlord, a big mech in mega armor. And he's got the custom force field, and then just all shooting. Or sorry, all melee. So he's got a kill saw and all that stuff. And then with the Grot Oiler, I've given him an enhancement as well, Smoky Gubbins, and his ability to bring back. I've got a unit of 3 Meganobs with him, with dual kill saws. And so the idea is that they are maybe a bit of a mop-up unit in the midfield. They're very slow. So, but they are kind of devastating. They are kind of tough if, you don't put enough into them and it's the Wa turn. Like, they have a 5-up, feel no pain. They're going to have that invulnerable save against shooting as well from the KFF. So they're tougher than they look. And then I've also got a unit of knobs in a truck with a war boss, just to go out there and wreak havoc. Just go punch stuff.
That's a lot of stuff.
It's a lot of stuff.
That is a lot of things going on. I was expecting you to stop like 3 units ago.
I know, it's a lot.
But I mean, that's what happens when you put, your quote unquote trash in a list, which I don't think is trash, but
well, I call it trash because it's like you're throwing it out to the curb for somebody to pick it up.
No, I get that.
Right? Yeah.
I also have trash in my list.
Yes.
Yeah, I like that. I'm a big fan of having, I call them psychological threats. So it's things that your opponent has to deal with, because if they leave them alone, they're gonna just like wreck face. Which is what like your Gork and Morkanaut, your Morkanaut are kind of those like, and to some extent the Mega War boss with the Mega Knobs, like those are 3 things that if you let them go, they're going to ruin your day.
Even the knobs are enough of a threat.
Yeah.
That you can't really just leave them.
Yeah, no, I like it, but they're not necessarily giant point sinks, all of them. Like the knobs in the truck are probably not that expensive for how much of a like punch they can give.
Yeah, for how much they can potentially take out. Yeah.
Can the truck push the button?
No.
Okay. That'd be hilarious if you could like lethal hits a truck as it smashed into people.
Yeah. No.
No, I really like that. I think that is a lot of tools in your toolbox. Like you've got speed, you've got punch, you've got sustainability, and you've got things that just kind of hold objectives, which is, I guess, your control.
Yeah. So when I play Dungeons and Dragons, my absolute favorite class is the Druid, because I feel like they're the Swiss Army knife of all of the classes. They can do a bit of casting. You can transform into a bear and be pretty good at melee. Like you can be somewhat charismatic. You are wise, so you've got some skills, and just being able to shapeshift into like a plethora of different animals and stuff. I just really like having a lot of different tools. I never know what the problem is going to be until you get to the table. I don't like feeling like I don't have an answer for it.
I like that. And I like how it also feels like, what an orc like warband would look like. Like an orc warband is not going to be like just like a bunch of boys. Like they need to have some structure there. Like there's a lot of different parts going on there. Like if you think of like, like a marauding warband like on some planet that just like, ends up in a battleground, like that's a group that makes sense.
Yeah, so at the moment I'm reading through the Yark trilogy, and so I get to have the human perspective of what orc warfare looks like from being right in the middle of it. And it's not only just boys. Like, yes, at first it's a lot of boys, but interspersed with no real rhyme or reason is everything else. Storm boys, war bikers, battle wagons, trucks, stompas. They've got everything all mixed in, and it doesn't really make any sense. And so I like to have a list where everything is all mixed in.
No, I like that. It actually, I feel like it. I mean, we don't play the same way, but it sounds more similar to how I build a list than I was expecting.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Like, well, here let's maybe talk about my latest the list I'm kind of trying to hone right now.
Okay.
I mean, I have a very easy starting point because you have to make Lucius the Eternal the warlord of an Emperor's Children army. So that is a non-negotiable decision. Thank you, Games Workshop. Not that I don't love Lucius. I've been running him with 10 legionaries lately because 10 legionaries allows Lucius to basically kill anything on an objective.
Okay.
And when I've been running Renegade Raiders, so with the +1 AP. So most of their attacks are AP 2 or 3 now.
Ooh, spicy.
Yeah, and legionaries allow you to reroll all wounds in melee when you're on an objective. If the thing is on an objective, you don't have to be on the objective; they have to be.
Dang.
Yeah, so like he's killed big knights before with like sustained hits on a dark pact. There's 2 power fists in there, 28 chainsword attacks.
It's just a lot of dice.
Just a lot of dice. You'll eventually roll 6s, and I mean, if you want to use lethal hits like a smart person, you can do that too. And I've been running him in a Land Raider because I love having a Land Raider on the table just because it's a tough 12. Like, if you didn't bring a tool, it just sits there all game. And if you did bring a tool, you have to get it to the Land Raider to use it.
Yeah.
And it often just sits in the middle or on a side objective and just is OC5. So you also can't just like throw one stupid thing on there to get rid of it.
Yeah.
And now that it can tank shock for 12 dice, it's also actually pretty effective at like killing those things.
Yeah.
So yeah, that gives you a way to just kind of like dump Lucius out whenever you need him to. And Renegade Raiders gives you a stratagem that when something comes out of a transport, you can reroll all your hits and wounds too. So if they're not on an objective, they can still do it.
Dang. Okay.
I've got a Demon Prince with wings, and there's an enhancement that if you're within 12 inches of your enemy's deployment zone, you reroll all hits and wounds, which makes the Demon Prince actually, that strength 8 -2 3 damage sword he's got actually somewhat effective.
I normally don't like this many rerolls, but I feel like if any faction deserves to have this many rerolls, it should be Emperor's Children, right?
Yeah.
Because they are always seeking perfection. They're always training to be absolutely as perfect as possible.
Right.
So yeah, okay. I can see it.
I mean, these are on like strength 4 weapons, strength 8 weapons. Like, this is not a re-rolling everything strength 14 -3 5 damage weapon. Like,
yeah.
And then it's obviously Slanesh, so it moves 14 inches. And the Demon Prince is actually, when it charges something, it does mortal wounds on the charge. So it can be very good at kind of like beating through some chunky things. So it can do up to 6 mortal wounds. You roll a number of dice based on the remaining wounds. So if it's at full health, it kind of just comes crashing in, which is fun.
Okay.
This is the other part of being able to kill knights. The Sorcerer and Terminator armor has a psychic ability that it gives +1 AP to something until the next shooting your next shooting phase.
Oh.
So you can get all those AP 2s up to AP 4s if they're on an objective. Which
oh my goodness. Wow.
And then I give him an enhancement, so he has Scout 6. So they're scouting Terminators.
I don't like that.
He runs with 10 Terminators.
I really don't like that.
So the Terminators are 6 Power Fists, 2 Chain Fists, 2 Accursed Weapons, and then everything has combi weapons. So the Devastating Wounds on Anti-Infantry 4+, which is fun. And Chaos Terminator's ability gives them re-rolling all hits if they do a Dark Pact. And the Sorcerer also allows you to re-roll all advances and charges, so they are fast boys. And I have an advance and charge strat that actually gives you +1 if they're on an objective too, so they can just like fly across the board.
There's so many re-rolls. Remember when they said that this edition would have less rerolls?
Listen, we're getting to the end of the rerolls, if that makes you feel any better.
No, but okay.
Some cultist mobs, so they sticky objectives. 2 squads of Noise Marines. Again, that being able to shoot onto something on an objective, Blastmasters go up to AP 3. So they're a strength 9, 3 shot, 3 damage. So they're usually pretty good at like pecking out. Like, they'll kill a Custodian because they're strength 9, or the other option is 6 shots at strength 6 at -1, so they can also just like waylay like guardsmen if you need them to, or Eldar. They're good at killing elves, and they trigger battle shock tests, which is nice.
Nice.
Those go into Rhino, so you can use the firing deck, and then 3 squads of Chaos Bikers.
Okay.
So, they are 70 points apiece. They move 12. There's a strat in Renegade Raiders where you can just make them auto-advance 6. And then there's also a strat where at the end of the fight phase, you can have them either make a normal move or fall back 12 inches.
Oof. What's their toughness and wounds characteristic?
Tough 5, 3 wounds apiece.
Okay.
So it's 9 tough 5 wounds with a 3-up armor save for 70 points.
Pretty good. Invuln?
No invuln, but
Okay.
their new ability is they get +1 strength on the charge, so their power fists go up to strength 9, and the chain swords go up to strength 5.
Nice.
Which is a nice little like thing, and they also can get the icon, so they don't tend to blow themselves up with dark packs.
Nice.
And then there's only 2 units left. Squad of Obliterators, which Renegade Raiders also gives you advance and shoot. Everything has assault. So Obliterators, you can actually like just run them around the board, which is fun.
Ooh.
So I've been playing them on the table to just kind of like, because they also get the once per battle indirect fire. So usually like turn 1, they can use that to blow something out of cover, and then after that, there's stuff to shoot at.
Yep.
And then a Venom Crawler, which is just a nice little tough 9, 5-up invuln, 12 shots at strength 6. It just skitters around, and so it's good for either holding an objective that isn't very threatened, or putting pressure on like it'll kill like eradicators, because it's strength 6 with enough shots to actually like do some damage, and they're 2 damage apiece, so it kind of just fries Marines.
Nice.
So yeah, it's a lot. Everything goes fast. I think the median speed in here is like 10 inches of movement.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I was rolling my last game with the Obliterators. Every advance I rolled was a 6, so they were moving 10 inches. 10-inch movement Obliterators.
Yeah. See, for me, your lists always sound horrific, because I don't like going against people who play really fast, aggressive lists. I hate it.
But see, there's not a lot of like oomph. Like, it's very killable. Like, I die super easy.
Right. But you also kill stuff super easy. All those rerolls.
I mean, that's literally Emperor's Children, though. It's like I call it the glass sword. Like, you shatter immediately when you are hit, but you will cut through everything until that point.
But you also have not a lot of, well, besides the Terminators, you don't have a lot of like super high value stuff, right? Like, I feel like in my list, I've got a bunch of super high value stuff. Like, you can easily point out like, oh, that Gorkanaut probably need to die, you know?
The Demon Prince is a sneaky little like threat, because if you leave him alone, because he moves 14 and has fly, he can like just absolutely like jump over your front line, or you can also deep strike him if you want to. He's a really nice rapid ingress target. I mean, the Lucius bomb is also with the Land Raider, like 600 points.
Okay.
Because the Land Raider's 240, Lucius is almost 100, and then the Legionaries are 180. So it is actually like quite a threat that if you leave it alone. Because the other side is, once Lucius is out, he has fight first. Right. So he's also really hard to like chop up in melee. So.
Sure. I get it. I'm not saying that there's not anything that you have to deal with. I'm just saying, when you first look at it, your brain goes, oh no, Terminators.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
They're not actually the scary. The Lucius and the Demon Prince are actually scarier than, like, the Terminators will kill anything they go into contact with.
Yeah.
But it's also a giant block of Terminators, and that's what you think it's gonna do. It's the like, everything else is like surprisingly killy. Like, when you think like, oh, battle line Legionaries, what are they gonna do? And then like I wiped a squad of Custodian Guard with them. Nice. With a leader, and the guy was just like, what? he was like 100% convinced that he like was gonna get to wipe the squad back, and I was just like, it's not gonna happen, man.
Anytime that I hear that many rerolls, I'm just like, oh man, that's gonna kill way more than you think it will.
Well, and that's what, when you have the dark packs also give you like the sustained hits. So when you have a bunch of like the Terminators, for example, combi weapons hit on 4-ups with Space Marines, but being able to reroll them, they don't tend to miss. The sustained hits will add in a few others, and then 4 up for dev wounds on like I've had 5 of them or 6. There was a squad of 5 Terminators with the Sorcerer kill Illuminor Seraph. They just like deep struck them in, and 1 round of shooting killed him out.
Nice.
So like,
good.
It's one of those just like you can't roll enough Feel No Pains because you're gonna have to deal with 10 to 11 devastating wounds.
Yeah.
And like even in Overwatch, they will generally do like 8 to 10 dev wounds with 10 of them.
All right. I'm terrified of your list, but I'm curious. So like, because I'm not super familiar with Emperor's Children lore, what is there any consideration for lore when you made this list, or was this just like,
oh yeah,
this looked cool and it's also super effective?
So I mean, the Chaos Bikers are very like Emperor's Children. Like
okay.
The Doom Rider was like an early demon prince who was a demon prince on a giant like motorcycle.
Okay.
So like Chaos Bikers to me feel very Slaanesh. The giant Terminator brick is also like that's what like the Phoenix Guard and like the Palatine Blades. So like Emperor's Children were also like the first company was very known for just like these giant walls of Terminators.
Okay.
So that also feels somewhat Emperor's Children for me. Venom Crawlers are kind of like the Slaaneshiest in my opinion of the like demon engines.
Mm-hmm.
Like in 9th, they used to do a bunch of crazy stuff to Psychers. Like they're basically where most demon engines are just like giant demons that you feed souls into. Venom Crawlers specifically feed on like psychic like Psychers, and they like hunt them down, and it's like 1,000 Psychers crammed into like its body is literally just like warp fuel.
Interesting. I like it.
Noise Marines are obviously very classically. And yeah, I feel like, having a very fast demon prince is also very like Slaanesh. So yeah, the Land Raider's probably like maybe the least like, that's technically a slow thing, but I use it so aggressively. So the Renegade Raiders have the auto advance 6 you can use on the bikers, you can also use on transports. So like first turn 1, that Land Raider goes 16 inches if you want it to.
My goodness.
Yeah, your 2-inch pivot tax, who cares? You're just like, and you're like in the midboard with a giant can that has a bunch of angry like Space Marines inside of it. So like it's not like it's a friendly tin can.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, there's 4 las cannons on this thing that also is full of like hate.
Amazing.
So yeah, I think part of it is just like the speed, and it's a lot of tools to kind of get. Like it's really like very infantry heavy, which I feel like is also very Emperor's Children. Like when even if you look at like the Horse Heresy like game, like the way a lot of their armies are built is like there might be a couple tanks, there might be a couple Land Raiders, but it's a lot of just like mass infantry.
Yeah.
And I feel like I kind of am trying to embody that. Like it's a lot of just like dudes effectively. Like, the Chaos Bikers are tough 5, but they're still just like regular Space Marines on a bike basically. Like it's a lot of just like regular Marines, which I kind of also like. Like I feel like I've got a lot of like when I talk about having like board control and board presence, like I can be everywhere all the time, and I really like that.
Yeah.
Like I can be on almost every objective turn 1.
I still feel like having like for me going against super fast lists is always it's a very difficult problem for me to solve. And I don't know if it's just because I think slow. So I need the extra time to formulate a plan. But it's definitely a big problem for me that I have yet to figure out how to solve. In a way that also complements like what I want to do on the table. So yeah.
I feel like you and it's like very I feel like they're similar in concept in that it's a lot of tools in the toolbox.
Yeah.
Like I also feel like my army is a lot of like Swiss Army knives. It's a lot of like, oh, I drew this card, like this is just gonna fly across and go do that.
Yeah.
And I pulled this card, I have to do something completely different. Like I don't have to worry about like, oh, is my movement perfect? Because I have so much of it.
I still feel like my movement needs to be perfect.
And I mean, it often still does. Like, having movement means that you, like, can adapt faster. Like, if your
Yeah.
opponent doesn't play the way you expected them to, you can still catch them.
Yeah.
But it does mean that you have, I would say you have a bit of allowance. I mean, I also feel that way, like, having played Tau, I used to feel like, even though Tau battlesuits move quite fast, you almost had no movement because you didn't have the charge phase.
Yeah.
So even playing melee makes you faster than the fastest shooting army out there with the slowest units.
I would agree with that. Yeah. Yeah. I definitely feel like I need to play more. It's funny because I play against World Eaters so much, it is fast most of the time, and that I seem to do okay against. But then I get into like any marine, like regular marine type fast stuff, and I'm just like, I don't know what I'm doing. Or things that deep strike a lot. That stuff too, I have a really hard time with. I think it's because I'm a defensive player. So the 3-inch deep strikes to me are like, well, I can't do anything about it, right? And really, I know that the answer is to just allow them to deep strike someplace where you want them to. Well, I'm just not good enough to do that on the table.
I mean, it's hard. That's the hard, especially with the 3-inch deep strike. It's hard to like offer up so many tasty choices that somebody can like make a mistake with it. Like, I think the first step to figuring that out is just like, don't give them an obvious easy one. Like, if you know, like, hey, they've got a bunch of like, what are they called? Are they the Space Marine ones with like the plasma guns that come down? Repulsors? Mm-hmm. No, not repulsors. Whatever. I can't remember what they're called. Like, if there's like the obvious, like, hey, there's a group of things here that are very important to my plan, and, you know, killing them is going to score the other guy like 10 points as well as like deny you 10 points. And it's like, if you can avoid giving them like that one obvious, like, oh, this is what I've been waiting for, then you can at the very least like start letting them make mistakes, because there's always going to be the best choice, but they have to figure out the best choice.
Right, but I also have to know what the best choice is. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I also just don't think 3-inch deep strike should be in the game.
I agree. I don't think it should be in the game either. Like, why is it 9-inch? Sorry, why is it 12-inch, 9-inch, or 3-inch? Can it be like 6-inch even?
I mean, even that would, with shooting units, it's not going to matter. Like, 9 inches is enough that there's going to be another piece of terrain in the way. I feel like that might have been what they thought. They were just like, oh, should we do 6 inches? And they're just like, what's the difference, man? Like,
yeah, at least they could be charged or whatever at 3 inches.
Yeah. Like, yeah. I guess 3 inches, just like, if it doesn't work, they're dead. Whereas 6 inches, especially with some of the other movement shenanigans, it's like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I agree though. I don't think it should be in the game, or at least it shouldn't be so prevalent.
I mean, if there was one assassin model that had it, I'd be like, cool, that's like a very specialized model. But like, that should be it. Like, it should be like named characters that are like very specifically like crazy good at this one thing. It shouldn't just be like, this guy with a jump pack.
Yeah, and I mean, like, you can't come in your opponent's deployment zone via reserves for a reason, but you can deep strike in.
Well, I think this gets back to like earlier editions where deep strike was uncertain. And
when it was fun.
The move towards making it more and more certain, like, I feel like they've gone too far now. We're like, okay, if you're able to just be like, hey, I'm 9 inches away, I'm right here, like, that's already too much certainty.
Yeah, okay, you want a 3-inch deep strike in? Well, maybe it's a hazardous test on like a
desperate breakout test,
or something. Like make it so like maybe it could fail, or maybe you take mortal wounds, or you lose models or something if you roll badly. Like, can we make it a dice game again?
Right?
Maybe.
I know. I sometimes wonder if the introduction of like CP and like stratagems is because it's that like it became a resource to manage.
Yeah.
And then it became, okay, well, if I have a resource to manage, then when I use it, it should do something. And
Yeah.
yeah, I feel like that's partly as well. Because, like, a lot of the 3-inch Deep Strike is tied to stratagems. It's like, okay, well, I
Yep.
paid a resource, so I didn't do something else with it. Therefore, I get this special benefit.
Mm.
But yeah, I feel like the rules for Deep Strike are already so good that,
I
and like
agree.
especially with rapid ingress, like it's even better now.
Yeah.
Like I don't use a lot of Deep Strike because I don't like playing that way, because again, I like to have pressure on the board.
Right.
I want my opponent to know that I can be on them wherever they are. There is no hiding from me. It's part of my fear and terror campaign. But
well, I have fear and I have terror just hearing your list.
I mean, but part of it's also like, you know, some of those like big stompy, like I struggle against knights because they just, especially Imperial knights, they just sit there and shoot me off the table.
Sure, but I mean, like the orc stompy robots aren't going to shoot you off the table.
No, but they're also like tougher, and especially if they're in the WA and they've got all their like buffs and everything, like it's harder to shift them. So
I don't think so.
Then like a Canis Rex. If
sure,
I can get to
I mean,
Canis Rex, I can kill him. I just can't often get to him.
Right, but he's also shooting you off the board.
Yeah.
Right. Orc robots aren't going to do that.
I mean,
you'll get there. You'll get there.
I got a lot of just tough 4 little guys. That every gun in the game is designed to kill tough 4 little guys.
Sure, like the best that I'm ever gonna hit you on with those robots is a 4.
True.
Yeah.
You don't just get rerolls because you're angry?
No rerolls. No. None of my factions apparently have rerolls, so.
I mean, Space Marines are supposed to be elite, so that is a thing. And like, you know, you were talking about world leaders earlier, and about like you can deal with world leaders, but not necessarily other Marines. I think the difference between like the way I play Emperor's Children, and I don't even have Emperor's Children rules yet. Just Renegade Raiders is kind of like the closest we've gotten in 10th. Is that Emperor's Children are fast every turn. World leaders are fast turn 1, and then they actually slow down dramatically. Like, other than Angron, like, world leaders are, 8-bound move, I think, 8 or 9 inches. And yes, you can give them advance and charge, so they can kind of bomb around. But, like, your regular Khorne Berserkers still only move 6. Like, and they don't have any type of shooting, so they spend a lot of time just running. Whereas, like, I don't know, a bike just moves 12 and then can move another 6. Like, it'll take a Khorne Berserker 2 or 3 turns to catch up to that, and then I keep moving.
Yeah. I hear you. That's why World Leaders is fun to play against. Because we're both running towards the middle, gonna smack each other.
Yeah, see, I tend to be, like, running towards every direction. I'm in all of the places.
Yeah.
Because I can be. So
Which is horrifying.
I mean, it's a different and honestly, like, it's not for everyone. And like, the way I play is very different than your average like Chaos Space Marine player.
You know what? The way that you play sounds a lot like how my husband plays the game.
Like, very fast.
Yes, very fast, very aggressive, in your face, right away. Basically, if I could sum up his philosophy when playing, especially Chaos Space Marines, it's if I die, I die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I follow my ABCs. Always be charging.
That's right. And because my husband is quite a bit older than me and has a lot more experience playing war games than me, this particular play style has always been either, it depends on the game itself, but it's either something I can leverage really well because I know exactly what he's going to do, or I have no idea what he's going to do and I can't leverage it at all.
It's hard to play again. Like, if you're not used to it, like I've thrown even, you know, some pretty good players, like not necessarily to the extent that I've won, but I've thrown their games off to the, like, they just like aren't used to playing a faction that isn't supposed to be that fast that quickly.
Yeah. Like, it's definitely it's a problem. Like, it's many problems that you have to solve immediately, and you don't have any time to breathe, and Yeah, so for me, it's not my favorite. It's not my favorite thing to play against. That's all I'm saying.
Like, actually, at one point, I had a 40% win rate if I went first, and a 75% win rate if I went second. Because if you came up
Well,
any amount, um,
we're not,
I would be on you. I'd be on your
yeah,
face.
we're not going to talk about my win rates. Unless you want to talk about Age of Sigmar, then we can talk about my win rates.
I mean, I bought some magnets. I'm gonna start working on getting my old world stuff, Age of Sigmar bubble.
Yeah,
Put
do
them on
it.
round bases.
Nice. I like it. I don't think anybody would really care if you had square bases, though.
You know what? I just don't want to hear about it.
Fair. Fair. Just don't want to take the chance.
I just don't want to hear about it. You know what? They'll be on their little square bases on top of circular bases, and they'll live their best life. Because all of
That's
the square
right.
bases are smaller than the circle ones, so it doesn't matter.
Nice.
They
Nice.
all fit, and yeah, I still have a lot of painting to do, but
Yeah, you can even paint the square bases like they're like little like tactical blocks, like little cement tactical blocks.
little tactical rock action.
That's right.
Okay, I have a complaint about a Age of Sigmar model.
Okay.
Archaon, that giant dragon,
Yeah.
has 3 contact points that he hits the base with.
Yeah, I'm gonna say that's if you're gonna buy big fancy models for Age of Sigmar, you kind of have to get used to that.
Because I thought the Chaos Knights were bad, because it's like one hoof will often be the only contact point with the base.
Yeah.
That's brutal though. Like,
yeah, Nagash is worse.
I can imagine.
Yeah, and what is her name? There's like I think she's a Neferata is bad. Like there's just like a lot of big centerpiece models that are really like you're looking at it going like why is it like this? Lady Olander also, it's like 3 teeny tiny little contact points. She like bounces all over the place. Kurdos is 1 contact point, so he's kind of like bouncy as well.
Like, and then I put him on an old world base, so it's instead of the 160 mil round base he's supposed to go on, I have him on a 60 by 100 millimeter base that is like a 1/6 of the size. So I'm like, he's been drying for days. The amount of glue I've had to use to even get him to stand upright, like I'm gonna have to like hide so much glue with the with just fluff and frock and like a bunch of stuff because he's a disaster of a model, and he's gorgeous. The dragon is so cool, but he's a mess.
I'm looking at him on my shelf right now. I'm like, he's quite large.
He's a foot tall.
Yeah, he is. Yeah,
like this is too big. That's too big. But I love it. I love how big it is.
That's like Age of Sigmar though, right? Like he's big. Nagash is not as big, but he's still pretty big. Kragnos is big. I'm thinking about the order. Marathi is big, like the Shadow Queen. She's big. She's not as tall, but she's really wide too.
But see, wide I feel like is easier to deal with. Like it's like a Great Unclean One is a large model, but it's also like a bottom heavy circle, basically. Like it's a sphere.
Yeah, Marathi is not bottom heavy because she's all wings on a teeny tiny snake body.
Yeah, I feel like Bloodthirster have the same because like Keepers of Secrets only have like the 2 hooves that are the contact points, but they don't have wings, so they don't have.
They're just straight up like a cylinder.
Yeah, they're not too bad.
Yeah.
But no, well, actually, I found out that the reason why I got that model, they never, in Warhammer Fantasy Battles, they never made a Chaos Lord on Chaos Dragon model. They were probably just like, we just can't be bothered. So it wasn't until Age of Sigmar that they were like, we've had this like model in the game for like, I don't know, 35 years. We should probably make one now, I guess.
Yeah. I do love it though. It is a very cool model. I have one built on my shelf that's just not painted. It's primed. Maybe one day I'll paint it.
I'm excited to get painted on it. painting it, because it actually doesn't look that like when I saw like Fulgrim, like the snake body Fulgrim, like there's so much detail in there that you can like screw up. He actually, Arcana is actually, for how big he is, it's actually quite tame. Like it's a lot of just like dragon flesh, but even like the armor isn't like ridiculously ornate. Like it's just very just like chaos armory looking. Like there's trim, but it isn't like ridiculous. Like the same I'm trying to think of even like 8-bound or just like walls of trim.
Yeah. But I mean that's because it's an actual like Citadel Games Workshop model, right? Whereas Fulgrim is Forge World.
Yeah.
And all the Forge World models are just like very intimidating to me. I have only painted some Telemons, like some Dreadnoughts for Custodes, which were not terrible. They weren't particularly fun, but I look at like the character series and I just like, I don't want to paint that. That just looks like a lot of work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. Like there's some characters that I would love to paint like Assault Harvitz or something, because I think he's just like a cool guy.
Yeah.
But it's also like, do you want to spend like $130 on a model that's going to make your eyeballs bleed?
Yeah.
It's like a little column A, a little column B. You know? Like,
yeah.
It's like I want to do it, but I don't want the experience of doing it.
And resin just is a little different to paint. Like the way that the paint goes on is just slightly different than the plastic. So I don't necessarily hate it, but I do find that it's easier to build up a texture on resin than it is on plastic.
Well, if I can get him to start standing up, then I'm going to start painting him soon. But it's been Tanya, the lengths I have already gone to, like he is leaned up against like a wall at this point, so he doesn't fall over while he's drawing. I have never been so frustrated with a model.
Interesting. I wonder if there's a way that you could maybe like pin it to the bottom somehow.
There's not a ton of you could do one straight through the bottom. There's a little tiny platform he has.
Yeah.
That you could do, which I might, if this doesn't work, that's what I'm gonna have to do.
Yeah.
But because the base is also so small, there's not a lot of like base to work with.
Yeah.
Like it's not like you can go in. Yeah. Like.
What if you put some like milliput or something on the bottom of the base, and then use that to help sturdy the pin?
I think my goal is actually going to be. I've been actually doing a lot of stuff with clay on models.
Right. You were telling me that.
So I think I might actually build just kind of like a rocky thing around him that'll kind of like, and then that can be another kind of thing to maybe shove some more glue into. So that'll also weigh down the base. Because like milliput isn't actually very heavy. Not like clay is.
No, definitely not like clay.
So like even a small amount of clay I think will give enough of a base for him for weighting that he won't like just like wobbly. Like my worry is that like, you know, if you put him on a slightly slanted surface, he's just gonna collapse.
Yeah.
Like, I haven't put the wings on him yet.
Oh, and he's still not standing up.
No. Well, he's got 2 sets of wings. He's got like his big out wings, but then he's kind of got like his like hook wings that have like, I don't know, he's got like his like vampire cape wings thing on the dragon, and then there's also the like big Be'lakor wings that he's got.
Yeah. So you don't have the big wings on?
No.
Oh my goodness.
This is the step where you get him upright, because I'm pretty sure whoever at least designed the guide to him realized like if you go any further than this and try and put the wings on first, you'll never get him to stand upright.
Yeah.
So there's at least like they pause you at the right step to like figure it out.
Yeah, I do feel like since that model was made, their design team is getting a little bit better. So for people who don't know, I work in the miniature industry. I work for a company that makes miniatures, and
you can name them if you'd like to. You can shout them out if you'd like.
So we make Orkz. I know. shocking. But you can see some of our designs at geargutsmechshop.com. But the way that my boss, because it's just my boss who designs everything and then I run the store, the way he explained it to me is if you want something to be balanced on a base, but be kind of tall or wide or kind of strange looking, if it's kind of a C shape where the sort of widest or tallest part is above where you've attached it to the base, you won't have any problems.
Interesting.
So the problem that we're looking at now with Archaon is that the tallest and the widest parts of this model are also the farthest away from where you've attached it to the base.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so that could very much be an issue.
Well, and I almost wonder if they had like Warhammer, like square bases in mind when they built him, because he's not like, he could easily be like on a 160 mil base. They could have designed him so he was a dragon with his feet and like claws on the ground.
Right.
But they didn't. He's standing upright and it's his tail. It's like the tip of his tail is what holds him up.
Yeah.
And
they wanted him to look like he's flying.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
But I think they like, I think that might have been some type of consideration of like minimizing his, like I think the minimal contact on the base might have been a consideration.
Maybe.
Because it's like obtusely small.
Yeah.
Like if
I will say that like a good designer has a whole bunch of different factors in their mind when they are creating a design. Because sometimes I'll ask my boss, be like, how does this not tip over? And like he'll basically like get out like a protractor, you know, and tell me the geometry of this entire design to tell me how it's perfectly balanced on the base, how it's not going to top over. And so far, it's been true, because one of the models in my army, which is I use it as a weird boy. I believe it's Odd Boss version C in our catalog. To me, I looked at it, I was like, how does this not tip over? Right? Like the boss itself is like floating like in front of the base, and his geometry is black magic. It's never tipped over. I've never tipped this thing over. So brilliant. I'm sure that it's some consideration must have been taken with Archaon, but like from what I have seen as an insider in the industry, that to me is the issue. And Marathi is in the C shape.
Okay.
And she doesn't tip over.
That's actually really cool. You know what? I feel like as 3D printing is getting more and more prevalent, I think you're going to see more and more just kind of like haphazard designs. And I think that's actually like a really awesome consideration to think about is, does the designer actually know how to design a miniature? Do they actually know how to like structure it? Do they know what goes into not just like having it look cool, but like work functionally and not just fall apart? Because yeah, they're definitely, I guess you can go the other way and just make like I'm not gonna call anyone out here, but very like dense, chunky looking models, because then you just don't have that problem because they're just a boulder.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I mean, we've got some of those too, if you're so inclined.
Yeah, I mean, you can have some, but just like an entire line. Like that's honestly like when I think of like Games Workshop miniatures versus a lot of 3D printed stuff, it's actually that they aren't just chunks of like, you know, here's my ball of resin. Like even things that are big chunky like, you know, Gazgul, there are parts of him that aren't. Like there is the beef, but then there is the like spindly bits that kind of like clean up. Because like when you look at something visually, there's a lot of things your eye like catches that you might not even be consciously thinking of. And I do think like I think once I get this like absolute monster from hell standing and built, I'm gonna be really excited. Because he does look cool. Like when I look, you know, like you look at the box and you're just like, I want this. This is awesome. And like that's what a good miniature should do. Is that you're just like, I am so excited to jump into this project because it just looks so cool. And I think, you know, as we see more 3D printing, I think we might even have people maybe appreciating like what quality miniatures look like. Because I feel like, yeah, I feel like we're in kind of a transitory period where it's like it's not just like the big companies putting out minis now, but now it's
You
just
can
like
design them yourself.
exactly, and
Yeah.
that is going to reveal how actually difficult this whole process is.
Yes. Yeah, like as somebody who is an insider into the industry, I always marvel at the quality of Games Workshop miniatures. Literally nobody can compare to them in terms of their plastics. There are companies who maybe make probably make a better resin product at the moment. But in terms of plastic kits, which are, I think, the most accessible to new
Mm.
gamers, nobody can touch Games Workshop.
I mean, even looking at like Wizards of the Coast now has miniature lines and is putting out like a whole sets of miniatures, and they look, some of them look like they're like on the same caliber as like 90s Games Workshop.
Yeah, like sometimes there's even like mold slip and things, and you're just like, oh, that's not something that you see very often. You might have some mold lines as it's a really popular kit and like the mold's been used a lot, but a mold slip is not something that gets through quality control with GW.
No, so there is, you know, we all like to crap on GW from time to time, but the miniatures themselves are, it's hard. It's hard to make that argument that they're expensive. That is the thing you can crap on, but they are good.
They are good. They are good. I mean, even though I have an entirely 3D printed orc army, I also have armies that are 100% Games Workshop products. So, you know, I believe in the products of both ways of doing things, right? And
I mean, I would
I
say Geargut's mech shop is on the higher end for what they do. Like, I wouldn't put them on just like some Joe Schmo selling some you know, STLs on some back, you know, back part of the internet. Like,
we
no.
have our own store and we will also print for you. So if you don't print, well, we will print our designs and the designs that we are licensed to print.
Yeah.
And you can see all of those on the website. So, yeah, you know, we've come a long way since I started working there 4 years ago, something like that. And I'm really proud of what we've created. And you know, we continue to try to innovate in the way that we produce things. We try to innovate in the way that we deliver files to people who buy them. And yeah, we're really proud of what we do there.
Yeah, this has been a completely unsponsored, off the cuff tangent. Uh, but no, I just wanted to complain about my dragon guy, but I think this has been a great conversation, and I think probably could be its own episode talking about 3D printing. And actually, I don't know if we've really done an episode about 3D printing. And just talking about like how to do it and how to do it kind of well and better, and yeah, because I've seen some. I have actually a 3D printed model that is she rough. We'll say,
When did you get it?
like a year, no, under a year ago.
Under a year ago. Okay.
Yeah, it was somebody locally made. It was a replacement for. There's no Exalted Champion model anymore, so I couldn't get
Right.
one. So I got somebody, and he like found something that was close, and it's just you can like even as I was painting it, it was just like this. I painted a couple 3D printed models, and I have one. My Keeper of Secret is 3D printed, and you can. It feels different to paint them. Like it's not as easy as it is to paint like a Citadel miniature.
Yeah, I will say that that's probably true of 3D printed miniatures in general. So it kind of depends, like, what is your goal in 3D printing? I think that 3D printing is for maybe two different types of people. One, it's really good for people who want maybe a lot of models. Like you are playing the game. You want a lot of models. You want the ability to digitally kit bash your models, right? Those are kind of like the two demographics that I think 3D printing is really, really good for. People who want to paint maybe Golden Demon level miniatures, maybe 3D printing is not for you for the miniature itself, I do think that you can print some amazing terrain stuff, though.
Yes.
And I mean, really, when we think about it, like all of the, like the artist proof, not the artist proofs, but like the demos that get sent out to the heavy metal team are 3D printed.
Yeah.
So when you look at box art, that stuff is more than likely 3D printed. So you can definitely get a very good result out of 3D printed stuff, but it does need to be kind of approached differently, for sure.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, it wasn't to say that you can't do well with it. It's harder. I think it's I sometimes see people like, oh, I want to get into 40K, so I got somebody to print me my like a miniature to try painting, and I feel like that's actually maybe not the best way to go, because it's a harder slog to, if you are trying to learn how to paint on a 3D printed miniature, and even just learning to like clean them up, like that's a whole other skill compared to, scraping a few mold lines off is very different than like removing the supports from like a 3D printed model that your buddy printed off to you and like washing it and cleaning it. It's just, it can be hard. It makes that like initial jump in harder, and it doesn't mean that you can't get over those hurdles. It's just, it presents different hurdles.
If you buy or are given a 3D printed model, you don't need to wash it though, but you may need to remove a few supports. If they sent it to you on the raft, that's maybe the problem. Yeah. That the raft should come off, like the printer should be pulling that off for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I've definitely had to clean off like a few supports off of things before.
Okay, so if it's just a few, yeah, you do. Yeah. I have a dental pick for it, and then I'll just use my knife for anything that's a little bit big.
But it's on a different caliber than just like scraping mold lines.
Yeah, but you don't have to scrape mold lines.
You don't have to scrape mold lines now.
No.
But sometimes it also doesn't fit together perfectly. Like there's, like you get into like needing like milliput or green stuff sometimes to like. I'm not talking about Gear Gut stuff. I'm talking about stuff that I've dealt with.
Yeah, so my boss's ethos is kind of like old school, where like the arms just come off and then you can put whatever other arms you want on there. Like we are there for people who really want to customize their stuff, because like most of our like we call them bruisers, most of their arms will fit on most other bruisers that we have. So if you
so it's like old school Games Workshop.
Yeah, so like if you don't want the pistol on the right hand side, you can find another model of the same size as the pistol on the left hand side, and you can mix and match. That's what we're there for.
I actually used to do a little bit of kit bashing, but the modern kits are so annoying, and the dynamic poses are so difficult to augment.
Yeah.
That it is like hell to like actually do anything with them. Whereas like the older kits, like I have a bunch of like, kit bash like guardsmen that have like Tau weapons when they were Guevesa, that like I did that all myself, and like didn't have to look up a guide or anything. I just did that, and like was like cutting las guns out of hands to put like pulse rifles in. Like it used to be much simpler. So no, that sounds good. No, I would put Gear Guts on probably like I said, they're on the higher end of what they do. Not every 3D printed model is going to be like Gear Guts level, like structured and like built sanely and like is going to be balanced and work. Or
we definitely know who our demographic is, and our demographic is generally people who want the creativity option, right? Like they want to mix and match. They want to make a force that's different and make a force that's truly theirs, and that's what we're there for.
Sounds very orky.
Yeah.
Yeah, this has been a lot. This went completely off the rails in the best possible way. Any last thoughts before we wrap up?
If you've never made a list that has one model in it that you just truly love, regardless of if it's good or bad, I really think you should try it at least once.
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't think I've ever built a list that doesn't have at least a few things that everyone else told me was stupid or wrong or bad.
Yeah. And every list.
And like I've done well at tournaments with people being like, your list sucks. Why are you doing, like, how did you end up here? Like,
Yep.
It's actually a really good feeling when you can do that.
It does. Yeah. It makes you feel like, yeah, I did that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You started from the bottom, now I'm here.
That's right.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe to Chaos Divided wherever you're listening from. You can find us on Instagram and YouTube at Chaos Divided 40K. If you're a fan of what we're doing, want to join our growing Wholesome Hammer community, you can find us on patreon.com/Chaos Divided 40K. Support the show, get on the Discord, chat with us, whatever you want to do. And if you'd like to connect with us directly, we're at Tanya Gates on YouTube and at the.warmistress on Instagram. I'm at Blushing Noise Marine, and send some love to at Nurgle_Snurgle. She's always here for positivity.
Cheers.
And until next time, bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.